Hello, hello, lovelies. You are tuning in to the Love Life with Court show. And as always, I am your host, Courtney Duano. If this is your first time tuning into the pod, well, welcome to the family. And if not, here is a warm welcome back. Today, we are changing things up a bit as I am so excited to welcome Kevin Paulmieri on the Love Life with Court show. Kevin is the founder and co-host of the Next Level University podcast. Early in his life, Kevin found success, but after a brush with near suicide, he realized he wasn't living a life he truly wanted. He became passionate about self-improvement and decided to make it his purpose in life to impact as many people as possible by becoming a role model podcaster and speaker. He has succeeded to make his podcast one of the top 100 with almost 1,700 episodes and 1 million listeners in over 170 countries. He has taken his life to the next level, no kidding, and achieved both personal and professional successes. Welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for being here. I am beyond excited to have you on today's episode.
Thank you so very much. Number one, for the warm introduction. Number two, for your time. I'm excited to chat. Am I part of the family now? They said, welcome to the family.
Of course. Welcome to the family,
Let's
personally
go.
from me. So before we begin and get into the juice of today's episode, I would love to just learn more about you and as well the listeners to learn more and specifically what your journey of success has looked like. I think it's very easy for us to, share the good side of what our successes look like. And I love how you're just extremely authentic on what your journey looks like. And if you don't mind just going into what it's looked like, the good and the bad. And
I always start with this. For every public success you see, there are probably a million private failures that nobody else ever shows you. And it's not because everybody wants to hide their failures. It's just, I don't know if anybody really wants to see me crying into my pillow. It's not necessarily peak content. So I do always start things that way. And I agree. I think a lot of us only see successes, and sometimes it can be hard when you're riding the struggle bus. So the quickest version of my story is I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. And we were definitely lower middle class. I remember often talking about how we were going to afford to pay rent. So that has shaped me in many, many different ways. I was not someone who liked school. So I decided I wasn't going to go to college. Everybody else can go off to college. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to start making money, and we'll see what happens. I don't think I was super focused on the future, judging by that decision, Court. So I ended up getting a job at a gas station. I pumped gas for a couple of years, and then I was a personal trainer, truck driver, forklift operator. I cleaned bathrooms at hospital. A very short period of time, I was an on-call firefighter. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just jumping from one thing to another, trying to hopefully get to the next level in life. I just didn't really know how to do it. Eventually, I got a job in a very unique industry called weatherization. Most people don't know what it is. All it means is we would go into large buildings, and it was my job and our job as a company to increase the energy efficiency of the building. Okay. So I might go to a school. Believe it or not, a lot of schools have attics. People don't know that. You go up in the attic and you find the holes where the air is leaking out. You fix the hole, you plug the hole, cool, you're on to the next hole. That was my job in a nutshell. Since I was working for the government at times and I was working on state contracts, I went from making $15 an hour at my previous job to $60 an hour at this new job. Wow. And I was like, okay, cool, I made it. Everything I did before was for this, and now I'm going to be successful, and this is amazing. This is awesome. My life is going to be great. So if you looked at me when I was 25, if you zoomed in, you would see somebody who had just competed in and won a bodybuilding show. So I was quite literally in the best shape I've ever been in. I will never be in that shape again, for sure. My girlfriend at the time was a model. I had a sports car. I had a brand new apartment. I had a high-paying job. It looked like I was crushing it. But internally, I was very insecure. I was very unconfident. I had very low self-worth. I had very little self-love. And one day my girlfriend came to me and said, I want to move across the country. I want to move from the East Coast to California. I've always wanted to live in California. I feel like that would be amazing. And I was just so scarce and so afraid that I gave her every reason in the world why she shouldn't do it. I held her back. without knowing it. That's what I was doing. I was holding her back. So she ended up sitting me down and saying, look, I'm going to leave because I don't think you can be with me in the way that I want to be. And that was terrible. It sucked. That was brutal. It was the right choice for her. I think she did the right thing. But at the time, I was heartbroken. I feel like I'm broken. Who's going to love this version of me? I'm supposed to be the most successful I've ever been, but I feel the worst I've ever felt maybe. Why is that happening? So this is usually the part in the story where people say, then I had this awakening. It didn't happen yet for me. No. For me, I assumed I just haven't made enough money yet. I think that's the problem. I'm making good money, but I'm not really making good money. Let me go focus on that. So the next year, I said, I'm going to make as much money as humanly possible. I'm going to make the most money I've ever made. So I spent 10 months living on the road because most of our contracts were in other states. So every week I was living in a different hotel in a different state, in a different town. We got to the end of the year. I opened up my final pay stub and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree.
Wow.
Expecting, Court, for all that inner stuff. Here we go. This should be it. I should be confident. I should have self-worth. I should be able to set boundaries. None of that changed. So in that moment, I realized that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously, just going through the motion. I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So in 2017, I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. I fell in love with podcasting, so in love, so deeply in love with podcasting as I fell out of love with my job. I'm not willing to go on the road for weeks at a time anymore. I don't want to do it. Talk about homesick. Every time I leave, I'm sad. Every time I pack up that suitcase, I'm sad. I don't want to leave again. I want to sleep in another random bed. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job site early. I start showing up late. I just don't care anymore. But there's not exactly a line out the door of people who want to give me money to hear me podcast. So I got to continue paying the bills. And my mental health just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually I woke up one day in a hotel room in New Jersey, which is 6 hours from where I lived at the time. Sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots, getting ready for the workday. And the best way to explain it is that day, it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, just noise. And every single one was on a different station. And one is saying, you're stuck here forever. Kev, people like you do not get opportunities like this. Never mind, give them up. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. If you ever worked up the courage to do that, what would your friends think? You make more money than any of your friends. All of your college friends, you still make more money than them. That's got to mean something. I make more money than anybody in my family, and I'm used to being broke. This is different. I like this. I want to have money. And then the big thing for me, Court, was what are you going to do with your life? I didn't have a plan A. I kind of think what I'm living right now is my plan B. I don't know if they have plans after that. I don't know if they exist. So in that moment, I thought to myself, if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me and I wouldn't have to worry about this. And this would all just kind of go away. I'm very blessed because I have amazing humans in my life. I have great people in my life. I'm so blessed. So I reached out to one of them and his name's Alan. He's the co-host and my business partner. And I said, hey man, I'm having that dark, deep, dangerous thought time in life right now where I'm coming to a crossroads and I don't know what to do. And he said many things, as he does, but the one I remember most was, Kev, over the last couple of years, your awareness has changed a ton, but your environments have remained the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment. So I ended up leaving my job 3 or 4 months later in 2018 and then becoming a very broke entrepreneur for the next couple of years, trying to figure out this journey. And things grew and the business grew and the podcast grew and I grew, most importantly. And now here we are 1,700 episodes later and I get to do this for a living, which is weird to say.
Wow. For sure. That's amazing. There's so many things I could pick from that, but I feel like, you know, my listeners, they know that I'm still in the beginning of my podcasting journey, content creating, and just figuring it out day by day. And it's nice to see someone who can lead that path and has done that path and trusted it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Of course.
That's your story. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that can honestly relate. There were a lot of points where I related. I myself was making almost six figures. I was 23 and I just was not happy. I thought making more money would solve all the answers because then I could do what I wanted to do. But the money never made me any happier.
Real quick, Courtney, are you more fulfilled now than you've ever been?
Very much so. I've never felt
on the
so
path.
passionate about, and that's what we talk a lot about on the show, is just trusting what your instincts are and trusting your gut. If you feel this is meant for you, everything else will fall into place. And I'm sure you're the picture of that. You're the you trusted the process, and having the people in your life that can support you makes it that much more empowering for you to trust the process, right?
Definitely. Yep.
A big focus lately, and I know you talked about it as well, has been centered on empowering others to achieve their greatest form of success, however they may define it. And with the term success being so subjective, how do you define success, especially having times in your life where you thought, I'm the most successful I've ever been, and comparing it to people, that you went to school with? How, at this point now, everything you've gone through, how do you define success in your own terms?
I would say success is its fulfillment now more than ever. I think it's growth, its impact, its fulfillment, and its character.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a podcast one time, and in the middle of the episode, the host said, "Hey, I have to tell you something. I have to own something right now." And I was like, immediately, I did something wrong. This episode must be going horribly wrong. I'm in trouble. And he said, "I really judged you before this episode. I thought you were a tattooed bodybuilder who was going to come on here and talk about motivation and grit and do it when you don't want to do it." And he said, "You are a very gentle, kind soul." And I was crying. At this point, I was crying. For me, character is the most important thing. I don't want to win if I have to be a bad man to do it. I don't want to. I'm not interested. Our growth is slower than it could be because we're not willing to do certain things that other people are. I just want to be able to put my head down at night on the pillow and be grateful for the way I did things. So that's a really big thing for me. Obviously, we have to be careful because you can't live totally off of external validation. But I would much rather somebody say, "You're a good man," than "You're a great podcaster. You're a great husband. Before you're a great business owner. You're a great friend." I would take that a million times before I took any of the other stuff. So that's something that's really important to me. But I think that's all meshed in fulfillment. I think fulfillment is you recognizing you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're growing and you're evolving and you're contributing, and it all means more than just what you think it means. It's not about me. The journey's not about me. It's about what can I do? What can I help with? How can I add value? So yeah, long answer short, I think fulfillment is the way I'd measure success now more than ever, because I think there's a lot of things that go into fulfillment.
For sure. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the author Robin Sharma. He's awesome. He, I feel like, talks a lot about like purpose and fulfillment and everything you kind of just touched on. And that's what kind of shifted my perspective as well, is that when it comes to doing what you want to do every day and being that good person, and, everyone's always chasing that, what is my purpose in life? What am I supposed to do in my life? What will make me feel fulfilled? At the end of the day, it's what can you offer to someone else that gives you that purpose and fulfillment. Yeah. So
that's why I asked you, because I had a moment. So you and I seem very similar. Not for me, at least. I don't know what your early childhood was like, but not successful and not supposed to be. Nobody would have bet that I was going to be successful. Very successful, then almost the least successful I'd ever been. Like I went way past zero.
Yeah.
But I remember I was walking around the kitchen one day and I remember thinking to myself, I'm actually proud of who I am. What is that about? Brokest I've ever been, the most single I've ever been by far. And I have no idea what I'm going to do in the future, but I feel really good about me. That's why I wanted to shout that out for you, because I know that feeling.
Mm-hmm. No, me too. I came from a low-income household. I did everything that I know. I had a single mom. I did everything that I was supposed to do. My mom wanted me to go to college. I went to college. My family wanted me to then go to university. I went to university. I got Dean's honor. I worked harder than I feel like I'd ever worked in my entire life. I felt like doing all of this was meaning that I would feel successful. And after I graduated, I felt more detached from myself and what I wanted in life than I'd ever felt before. Yeah. And when I decided, I did go to school for a long time. I went into debt. Getting that job after university was a job I thought I would have to work up to for a long time. And I got it right after I graduated. I still did not feel fulfilled, just as you're talking about. And when I decided to start podcasting and doing content creating, it was like, this is it. But I think that was a part of my journey. Just like everything you're talking about, I needed to be put through what I went through in my life to bring me to where I am today.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. Now, you talked about self-love, and you touched on when along your journey, you lacked that self-love. Do you think self-love and confidence significantly influences someone's success?
I think you can achieve success without self-love. I don't know if you can own it without self-love. Because if you don't feel like you're deserving, if you don't feel like you're worthy, that has been my biggest issue, is I just don't feel good enough. Again, a lot of episodes and a lot of that stuff, it's awesome. But I still have moments before I do certain episodes where it's like, I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to add any value. Is this person even going to like me? Is the audience going to like me? I have that. And you'd think that'd go away by now, but I don't think it's ever going to. I don't know if it'll ever go away. I think that's just kind of part of the journey for me. Yeah. So I think that confidence is required to elevate, because if you, let's say your comfort zone right now allows you to do like 10% more than what you're comfortable doing, I think real confidence is you understanding that you can try something and it might not go right. It might go very, very wrong, but it doesn't mean it's the end. Right? Confidence is competence. Confidence is knowing that if I do this and it goes horribly wrong, there's still tomorrow. I can still get up and I can still try again. I think it's really hard to grow and succeed without true confidence, I would say. Without self-love, I think you can. I just don't think you can live there for very long. I don't think you can be fulfilled without self-love. Sure. I think you can find external success, because I've done it. So, yeah.
Of course, for sure. Yeah. And especially when it comes to that like imposter syndrome, where you were talking about, like, sometimes you go and do something, and although you have that confidence, you're still like, am I supposed to be doing this? Is this like meant for me? And when you start succeeding in what you love, I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes in so much. Cause like, who do I think I am? Anybody could do this, and I think I can do this. But it's about checking yourself. Oh, you are deserving of this. You can kill it. You're gonna kill it. You've been killing it.
I don't think imposter syndrome is bad.
No, I agree. I think it's a nice reality check and a way to challenge yourself as well, and always go up and up and up, because there's no limit when it comes to learning more about yourself and succeeding in what you love doing.
It shows that you're growing. What is the opposite? You don't ever want to. You always want to say like, yeah, this is easy. This will be easy. If everything you do is easy from like a resistance standpoint, you're not growing as much as you could. I would bet money on that. I would bet money on that. A really good example of this. I went on a podcast one time, Court, and this person was a doctor for NASA. This person was a space doctor. I didn't even know that was real. I thought that was just in the movies. And I remember I was like in the green room before, and I had a moment where I said, there's no way it's supposed to be another Kevin Paulmieri. Something got mixed up. There's no way I'm supposed to be here. This isn't happening. So I try to look at the most recent and relevant proof. So relevant proof for me is being on another podcast. Recent is, when did it happen? A week before that, I went on a podcast that was I think the host was like a doctor of psychology. And I had the same moment where I said, they're going to ask me some stuff that I don't know. And maybe they think I'm like super well educated and I'm not, but I just did the same thing. It's like, when was the last time I felt this way? Oh yeah, on that podcast I went on last week. How did that go? That went better than I expected. Okay, so what if this is just my pattern? So something that's helped me tremendously is recent and relevant proof, because it, instead of getting hijacked by your emotions, you can kind of logic yourself into understanding you're going to be okay because you were last time. So that's helpful for me.
For sure. I think many times what happens to people is they fall on comfortability, like wanting to be comfortable, seeking that comfort, but you're not growing. Like you said, you're not growing if you're not uncomfortable, and embracing those uncomfortable moments, not looking at it as a negative association, but just, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable right now.
Yeah.
Let's see how far I can take this. Now, what common patterns, and this one I think is a really good one, what common patterns do people fall into that you see that stop them from getting the life they want?
Ooh. I would say the most common pattern I've seen is lack of self-awareness. And if we go into the depths of that, I've never met a human who is accurate with their self-belief and their self-worth. Most people are either under or over where they actually are. So a really good example of this is if you say to somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe in yourself, in your own capability of doing something? They might say 10. Like, I have 10 out of 10. I can do anything. It's like, okay, why aren't you though? I'm not sure. I don't know. I kind of like self-sabotage. Like, all right, cool. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe you deserve the results of what you believe you can accomplish? And they might say, what do you mean deserve the results? Like, how much do you feel you're worthy of them? How much do you feel like you can build the mansion, but then you're afraid to open the door and walk in because you don't deserve that level of quality in your life? And they might say like a 2 out of 10. That's a common thing that we see where somebody has a lot of self-belief, but they have very low self-worth. One of the common things we see is people assume it's one or the other. If you have a ton of self-belief, you're fine. Not true. If you have a ton of self-worth, you're fine. Not true. You can be very, very competent when it comes to self-worth, but not believe in yourself. 100%. 100%. Or you can have an ego and think you're 10 out of 10 confident when you're really not. That's your ego protecting you. Or you can think you're 10 out of 10 self-worthy, but that's entitlement. And that's not real either. It's getting down to who are you really? What is your home? Are you insecure? Are you arrogant at times? Are you someone who doesn't believe you deserve anything? Are you someone who believes you deserve everything by default? That's usually something we see pretty often, because if you don't know where you're starting from, it's very hard to get to where you want to get to. So lack of self-awareness would be the most common pattern I have seen, because it's really hard to know what's best for you if you don't know who you are yet.
And how would you guide someone, or what would you recommend someone to do to build up their self-awareness and work on their self-awareness?
Look at the past for sure. It's therapy. If you said somebody has an hour and they're going to get the most bang for their buck when it comes to self-awareness, go to therapy. Don't listen to my podcast. Go to therapy. Because what is therapy? You're talking about your past and you're uncovering why you feel the way you feel today. Obviously, that's kind of like an extreme one, and not everybody's right or ready for that yet. So I would say reflect on your past for sure. Learning about anything really is going to help your self-awareness, because when you learn about something, you're going to say, I knew that or I didn't. Now, maybe I don't know as much as I thought about finance. Interesting. It's that simple. Okay. That's really good. I love asking why. One of the best things for my self-awareness was to say why. In this moment, I've already had this moment. Why do I feel super comfortable around you? Why? Why is that? I feel like we have rapport. You were super, super kind in the intro. We had a little conversation before. I talked to you through the app like 5 times today. Why? Interesting. Okay. Why don't I feel super confident or comfortable with certain people? Oh, because they have an ego and you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I more comfortable with women than I am with men? Interesting, because women are usually super warm, and if anything, when they get nervous, they go under and they don't get arrogant. They get super, super humble, and sometimes, not always with men, it goes the other way. Those all came from why. Why did that interview go well and this one didn't? So that, and then last one would be deep conversations with people. When you have super deep conversations like this, I'm going to leave with more self-awareness. Hopefully, you'll leave with more self-awareness. And hopefully, whether you're watching or listening, you'll leave with more self-awareness as well, because anything that makes you question your reality is going to probably help you with your self-awareness.
No, even before we started today, like we were talking about how we have that imposter syndrome, and I was doing the same thing. Like it's about that being aware and going back to where is this coming from, and having evidence too is what I always try to do for myself. Like, why are you nervous? Why do you have any reason to be nervous? Is there evidence or reasoning to why you're so nervous right now? When you're meeting a stranger, we've talked through the phone, but it's nothing to like when, we're talking right now. I had no idea what you're going to be like in real life or as we're talking face to face. And yeah, I think it's important to, like you said, recognize like, where's that coming from and just being aware. I 100% agree with you.
There's real quick, Courtney, sorry.
No, of course. Go ahead.
There's another piece of confidence that I don't know if people really have tapped into. There's capability externally, and then there's character. There's, is Courtney going to like me versus am I going to be able to add value? So just for anyone out there who says, I feel like I'm capable, but I struggle in relationships. You might not have the confidence of the character side of things. If you're somebody who is liked by everyone, but you don't have a ton of belief in yourself, you might not have confidence when it comes to capabilities, but you're likable. So I just wanted to throw that out there because that's something that we've learned recently. I'm not really nervous that people won't like me because I don't know, it just usually works. But for the majority of my life, hopefully I'll be able to add some value as well.
For sure.
So just want to throw that in there.
No, for sure. I'm always in my mind, when I'm recording my podcast, when I started my podcast, I'm sure you can relate. It all stems to how can I offer value to someone? How can I make someone come back and want to listen to what I'm talking about and find a way to connect with a person that you're not even talking to? Because when it comes to the podcast, they're just, right now, the listeners or the watchers, you can't talk back with us. So how can we offer an opportunity for you to learn, but also feel like you're a part of the conversation, right? How does a strong sense of self-awareness really support someone's journey? Like someone who's listening right now and they feel that, when it comes to being self-aware, they may think, okay, I'll work on being self-aware, but how can we encourage them to actually want to build their self-awareness and relating that to how they can become more successful through that and achieve the life that they want?
I want us all to imagine that we are taking a road trip across a country. I live in the U.S. I believe you live in Canada. So let's just say we're taking a road trip across the country. I want you to imagine that you have no idea how your car works. No clue. You put the key in and you turn it and it starts, and you know what the gas pedal does and you know what the brake does and you know how to put gas in it and play the radio and all that stuff. But your car starts making this weird noise like an hour into your trip. And you're thinking to yourself, I really hope this is not that big of a deal because I have no idea what to do if it is. I liken that to self-awareness. All that is car awareness. The vehicle I'm in, I have no idea how it works. If it breaks down, I am in trouble. If this light goes on, I don't know what that means. If this noise happens, I don't know what that means. If this smell starts to happen, I definitely don't know what that means. Self-awareness is the same thing, but with us. Except the journey is longer, the journey is more personal, and the journey is harder than just crossing a country because that only takes maybe a week or 14 days or whatever. So with self-awareness, you are more in control of everything. You're more in control of how you react to things. You're more in control of what you do, of what you don't do, and more importantly, why you do or why you don't do. And then you get the layer under it. Okay, I got super triggered today at the grocery store because this person said this to me. Why? Oh my goodness, because every time I feel disrespected, I feel unseen. I feel like the person doesn't see me for who I really am. Why? Oh my goodness, because that happened to me so much in high school. Why? Oh my goodness, because that was my childhood. My entire childhood, I felt like nobody saw me and valued me for the person I was. Wow. And crazy how something that happened to me 30 years ago can still be impacting me today. Oh, okay. Well, next time that happens, now I know where it came from. I know what that light means. I know what that sound means. So I think it's the best way to be fully in control of your life because you can see all the layers. You can see behind the curtain. You can see under the hood. You can see behind the door. And you become in control rather than your responses just being natural. Well, when I'm around these type of people, I get triggered. No, it doesn't have to be that way. We can dig. Why do you get triggered? Oh, they seem arrogant. Are they actually arrogant? No, they're confident. And their confidence is a mirror for the lack of confidence I have in that arena. This is a me problem. This isn't a them problem. This is a me problem. Oh my goodness, I can work on this. So ultimately, it creates the opportunity for us to have the responsibility to work on ourselves and our traumas and our triggers and our reactions. So next time they happen, we can be in more control. And that, I think that's the best way to be ultimately, quote unquote, successful, fulfilled, whatever you want it to be. When you know yourself, you know what that means. One of the reasons I think a lot of us assume external success is everything is because we're not that self-aware yet. And then it takes massive pain of accomplishing what you think should make you happy and then realizing, oh my goodness, that didn't do it. You just got a huge self-awareness download. Oh, that ain't it. Okay, interesting. So what is it? So I think it helps us understand ourselves at a deeper level. It helps us get very familiar with what our hell yeses are. And it helps us get very familiar on what our hell no's are. And then it helps us understand all the intricacies between those two.
And Kevin, I love how you talk about a one word that is so simple, but we often, I think, neglect to ask ourselves is just why. Why are we feeling this way? Why do we react that way? And a big one for me that took me a long time in my healing journey was, why am I getting triggered right now? Like, because when I get triggered, and whoever's listening, when we feel triggered, it has nothing to do with the other person. It has nothing to do with what someone said to us. It all stems from ourselves. What are we allowing to give our energy to right now? What are we not acknowledging that, you know, like a lot of stuff stems from our subconscious, where you think, I'm triggered because you made me feel this way when you're having a conversation with someone. But no, you're actually triggered because maybe this stems from something in your childhood, that maybe it was a word, you know, and just we forget to just ask ourselves, why am I feeling this way? And I think that was just a nice reminder that you gave us.
I appreciate it.
Ask ourselves why more often. And where you talked about, you know, like how what we reflect on the outward is typically like a response to our environment and things like that. Now, a lot of what I talk about and preach about is whatever someone says to you or what we say to others is simply a reflection of ourselves and our insecurities. When it comes to feeling insecure, how can we work on acknowledging our insecurities and building on that? Because that's, I think, a big component of self-love and having self-awareness is not suppressing what our insecurities are, but acknowledging them and welcoming them.
I would say number one is get very honest about how the ability to change the insecurities. I'm 5'5" on a good day. If I squat heavy that day, I might be 5'4". It depends. That is my biggest insecurity for sure. For sure. My business partner is 6'2". My other best friend is 6'1". When I take pictures with them, it looks like I'm with my stepfathers. Like that's what it looks like. But I got very honest with myself and said, well, Kev, what are you going to do about it? What options do I really have other than just to admit it and say, you know what? It does kind of suck. Yeah. I wish I was 6'2". I do. That'd be really cool. but I'm not, and I'm not going to be. So we either get comfortable with what is, or we wish that it wasn't what it is for the rest of our lives. And that's not a way to live.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, and again, I know that can seem somewhat hardcore. That's really what's helped me, is like, it's not going to change. So I have to get comfortable with what's real. I do. Or this insecurity is going to control me for the rest of my life. And I don't want that to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it is, I think you use, and this is gentle depending on where you are in the journey, but you use the discomfort as necessity to change it. If you're insecure about your ability to speak and you say and you're not a strong speaker, use that as a necessity to say, well, I know I'm capable of better. I just get so insecure when I'm around people because I don't think they take me seriously. That's a great opportunity for us to practice. I think we have to admit what is the way it is, and we have to take responsibility for what is not the way it has to be forever. That's really where I would go with that. And I think the other big thing is surround yourself with people who you can talk about your insecurities with.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing worse than having an insecurity and nobody knowing about it. It's only if they care about you, right? Mm-hmm. It might be the other way. If there's a bunch of people that don't like you, don't tell them your insecurities, because they're probably going to use it against you. But yeah, making sure you're surrounded by people who really, really know you at the deepest level, that's what vulnerability is. Mm-hmm. My business partner knows my insecurities. My wife knows my insecurities because I trust them. Mm-hmm. And if I want a real, authentic relationship, it has to be based in truth. That's what authentic is. That's what vulnerability is. Can I add something quickly? I have a question for you. I want to flip the script.
Of course. Go ahead.
Okay. I hope you've never been asked this question before, but I do think it will uncover. Would 5 year ago Court be triggered by today Court?
Oh, that's a good one. Yes and no. I think just my self-worth was so low that I very heavily judge. And that's why I say, like, our own insecurities are what we say to others are just a reflection of our own insecurities. I heavily judge people that were in my position right now. You know, I have a lower following. I'm still following my passions. I still quit my job. I didn't have the results in front of me to make that decision. I go on the mic every day. I'm very out there. I have very minimal, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, you know, I'm very open. I have no filter when it comes to sharing parts of my life. And I think 5 years ago, Courtney wouldn't be like, who are you to be doing this? Like, what are you doing? And honestly breaks my heart to think about where I was 5 years ago. It makes me happy to see where I've grown, but not like, I wish I could shake her and tell her her potential. Because it makes me emotional, honestly, like thinking that you're going to make me cry. Just thinking that there's a lot of people out there that don't see their potential. And that's why I wanted to create a platform like this, because, you know, even with you too, there was a point you didn't see your potential. And I'm sure you wish you could have gone back and shaked that Kevin to tell him how amazing his life is going to be. You know, I didn't think I was deserving of love. And now I'm married to the most amazing man, and we share such a strong connection. And I didn't think a lot of my life I was deserving of where I am now. And thank you for asking that question.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
How about you?
I don't think 5 years ago Kev would have liked this Kev very much, because I really do feel like I am confident now, and that version of Kev would have to find something to poke at. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're confident, but I would trigger him for sure. And that has helped me. You were talking a little bit about fear of judgment and negativity. I'm not at the transcendent place where somebody leaves a negative comment where I'm like, I'm hoping for you, friend. I hope all is well for you. I'm not there yet. My initial thing is like, let's just fight then. You know, if you don't like me, we'll just fight. And I'm trained to do that, so maybe I'll win. It's the understanding that I try to get to now after I'm triggered is, honestly, yeah, I probably wouldn't like me either. I hadn't done that much work 5 years ago. I probably would look at Kev and say, how dare you? How dare you talk about your amazing relationship? Can't be that amazing. It's got to be something behind the scenes. How dare you talk about how you do an episode every day and you'll never miss? You arrogant, smug bastard. How dare you? What do you mean you're never going to miss? You're that arrogant? Well, I can see it. I can see it. That's why I wanted to ask you, because, again, I feel like you and I are very similar, but it's helped me have empathy. I'm not all there yet. I'm trying. I'm working really hard. But it helps me have empathy knowing that even I probably would have not liked me. So I understand why somebody who has no idea who I am might not like me that much either, because I am triggering a piece of them that I probably would have triggered myself.
Yeah, exactly. I relate 100% on that. Well, the way you turned that table.
I felt pulled. It was a thing. I felt pulled to do it. I do it sometimes. I had to do it.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I think that's one thing that everyone should do is I've told you before we started that I lost 100 pounds in the last 4 years or so. And for a long time, I just didn't think I was deserving of a healthy body. I every day woke up like, look at that. Like, I had nothing ever nice to say to my body. And I had all this love to give to everybody else in my life. I was so giving. I had only kind words for others. And where you say, like, someone gives you, like, it gives you a comment that is not the nicest. With me, I was very easily to say, like, oh, just send them love. They might be having a hard day. But I could never give that to myself. Like, it was not even a question. Like, I had no empathy for myself. And it wasn't until I started my self-love journey before I started any of this. And that's why I wanted to focus so much on self-love today. Before I started any of my success journey or fulfillment journey or purpose and figuring out what I wanted to do in my life, it all stemmed down to just figuring out how the heck to love myself. And I think that's the stepping stone for someone to receive the life they want. Even when it comes, I don't know how you feel about manifesting and spirituality, but I myself cannot connect myself to any kind of spirituality or, thinking there's a higher good, because I didn't even know what connecting to myself looked like, let alone connecting to something I cannot see and only feel and align myself with,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Heavy episode today. I love it.
For sure. We trauma bond here.
I'm in, my friend.
I know there's a lot of listeners that are tuning in right now that they just don't know where to start. And we were all there at one point when it comes to being motivated, when it comes to staying disciplined. If you don't have that self-love component, it's very difficult to do that, right? And I always say that discipline comes before motivation. You'll never feel motivated unless you're able to discipline yourself first. And now, how does someone become more disciplined in your opinion?
Set goals that matter deeply to you. Deeply, not surface level, deeply. Because I was on a podcast right before this, we were talking about this. I think there's a big difference between having discipline and having necessity. The best example I can give is if every day you walked out into a field and you dug 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 and you dug. And I said, eventually you're going to strike gold. I can't tell you how long it's going to take, but eventually you'll strike gold. It's discipline to go out there and do it every day. That's discipline. I know it'll work eventually. I'm going to pay today for something that I'll receive eventually. That's discipline. Necessity would be your family is buried out there. And I need you to get them because they have 100 days worth of oxygen. If you don't get there in 100 days, your family, unfortunately, is going to perish. Now, again, very hardcore example, but that's necessity. It doesn't take discipline to do that. You're not just going to work 8 hours and go home. You're going to dig until your hands bleed, and then you're going to do the same thing tomorrow because I'm not going to wait 100 days. I'm going to get them today. That is necessity. I think discipline is motivation. I think necessity is inspiration. And I think they're two very, very different things. So what I would say is set deeply meaningful goals, or we have something where we call it a commitment device. So I was struggling with fitness. I got lazy. I didn't want to exercise. I lost motivation. That's the simplest. I lost motivation. So I went to my wife one day and I had $100 bill on my desk and I gave it to her. And I said, I need you to do me a favor. And she said, what's the favor? And I said, if I don't go to the gym every day for the next 7 days, I need you to take this $100 bill and I need you to rip it up in front of me. And she said, Kev, no, I'm not going to do that. And I said, I need you to trust me. It's already done now. It's done. I'm going to do it because I created enough necessity. I created enough necessity where I'm not going to lose $100 over this. It's not that hard to go to the gym every day. Here, I'm going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I didn't rely purely on discipline. A lot of it was necessity. So that's kind of part one, is where I would start, is maybe break the goal down to something smaller that you really feel like you can achieve, and it's something deeply meaningful and it inspires you to accomplish it. That's one. That's one thing I would say. The other thing is there is a correlation between discipline and design. So let's say you want to podcast once a week. Cool. What's a really good way to podcast once a week? Make sure your mic is set up, and make sure your lights are set up, and make sure your camera's set up, and make sure you have a strong internet connection and all of that stuff. You design your apartment so it's easy to podcast. That makes discipline a little bit easier. Well, I don't feel like doing it today, and I have to set up my mic, and I have to set up my camera, and I have to set up the lights. Design makes discipline easier. So I would try to pair all of those things together to understand that you're not going to be disciplined for something you don't believe you can accomplish, most likely. You're not going to be disciplined in something you do not believe will be worth it deeply. And you're probably not going to be super disciplined towards something that doesn't inspire you, because then you're just doing something you don't like for the sake of doing it, versus doing something you might not like for a promise that you believe will ultimately be worth it.
For sure. What advice would you give to someone? Let's start with that. If they're at the point where they have the discipline, they're doing what they think they should be doing every day, but they're not fulfilled.
Ooh, I would sit down and I would write out your top 5 core values as a human being. What do you value as a human being? I've had many people that I've worked with who say, I want to be a podcaster and an entrepreneur, and I want to be like the most successful. And I want to travel the world and give speeches. And this is the question I always ask. I love this question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how important is it for you to be home every day to get your kids off the bus? And they'll say 10 out of 10, most important. You're not going to be an international speaker then. Don't. You'll be miserable. I've had many people who say, I want to do what you guys are doing. I want to podcast every day and I want to do that. It's different now because everything we do is virtual. So if I did have kids, I probably could get them off the bus. But I'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to be at your children's recitals, sports events, that type of stuff? Oh, I'll never miss one. I might not do what we're doing because I would have had to miss a lot. And I would continue to have to miss a lot. I think all it is, core values are what help us stay fulfilled, because it's what do we actually value as a human being. I'm in this new, different phase, Court, where when somebody tells me their goals, I don't really care about your goals. I care about what you want your life to look like every day. Goals are eventually. Your day-to-day life is what the journey is going to look like until you accomplish the goal. And depending on the size of the goal, it might be that way forever. It might be that way forever. Taylor Swift is not going to be fulfilled if she hates travel. She's not going to be fulfilled if she hates performing. She might not be super fulfilled that every time she walks out into public, people take pictures of her, but that's an unfortunate byproduct of being who she is. So I would sit down and say, all right, let's be real. What do I really value as a human? Because it goes both ways. I know people who, and again, potential trigger warning, but sit with this. I know people that want to spend less time with their families than they currently are. I don't make them wrong for that. Family's just it's not a super big core value for them. I see my mom and my grandmother 4 times a year. Family for me, it's not as big. Now, my wife is different. I see my wife every day. But I'm not the type of person that's going to go out of my way to see my family. It's not the way I was raised. It's not a core value for me like it might be for someone else. And this is why when we partner with someone in life, it's really hard because we have different core values. And that's why things can get I know we're off topic on that. We're trending in a different direction. But that, I would say that, figure out what your core values are as a human, because that is what you value. And if you're going outside of alignment, you're probably not going to be super fulfilled.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, this is a pretty selfish question, but being a student of David Meltzer's coaching programs, am I correct on that?
We were mentored by Dave for several years. Yes.
Wow. That's just, first of all, awesome. But what was the greatest takeaway that he gave to you or offered to you or mentored you in?
This is a really interesting one because I didn't like the coaching in the beginning.
Okay.
And the reason for me was Dave is someone who is very, very, very future oriented, and I wasn't. So it was really hard for me to take advice because I didn't believe I was going to last long enough to actually impart the wisdom that I was given. So he really helped me understand the importance of long-term thinking for sure. He also really helped me understand consistency. We were already very consistent, but he's a different level of
different breed.
Yeah, like 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single night, like always public facing. That. The other lesson that was really important for me was the be more interested than you are interesting. That's something he says very often. Be more interested than you are interesting.
Okay.
Be able to give more than you're there to take. That is something that has stood with me to this day. I think you're really good at that. I think that's something you're really, really good at.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome. So yeah, those are a couple of the big ones. It was also for me. So we were in California. We were at an event in California, and when we were going out there, we talked to Dave and we said, "Can we come interview you in person while we're there?" And he's like, "Yeah, come interview me." And it was one of the hardest interviews ever, Court. We go to his headquarters in California, and it's pretty much shake hands. Hey, long time no see. How you been? We're in this room over here. Everything's set up. Okay, you have 27 minutes and start. Lights, camera, action. There's 5 cameras, a bunch of lights. Are you good to go? Cool. That was one of the hardest interviews / most imposter syndrome interviews ever, because it was an interview on our podcast that I had like no time to prep for, and I was freaking out. So it also taught me that sometimes people seem good when maybe they're more lucky than they are good. Other times people are good, but they seem lucky because they got an opportunity and they really, really capitalized on it. And I feel like we really, really capitalized on that opportunity because we were as prepped as we could have been in the circumstances given.
And I see that. I mean, you can definitely see that you have utilized every resource that has came your way with appreciation and wanting to learn. And that's, I think, when people start listening to podcasts and they start their self-help and self-improvement, you've hit a point where you want to learn, you want to understand more about you. And you can see that you're like a sponge. And I feel like that's what I'm working towards, is I want to become a sponge of knowledge. I just want to absorb everything and be able to bring it back to the pod.
Well, then you get to decide what you want to absorb and what you don't.
For sure.
Right?
For
Layer 1 is you absorb everything. And then eventually you get to the point where it's like, okay, I've absorbed that before and that wasn't it for me. And then you get to decipher. And again, that's just self-awareness. It's just self-awareness in a nutshell. So yeah.
Whatever resonates with you, right? At the end of the day. Now we're almost at the end. So thank you so much for being here. I did post on my Instagram a little Q&A announcing that I would be having a guest on the show, and they had just a few questions for you.
Let's do it.
And number 1 being, at the end of the day, what motivates you?
I have a written thing on my wall that says, "Don't ever forget the gas station and cleaning hospital toilets. Keep going." I'm not supposed to be here. I'm playing with house money. I'm way more successful than I ever thought I would be. What motivates me is stuff like this, where I can have a genuine impact on someone's life when I never thought that was possible. And for most of my life, I didn't even think I was worthy of doing that. That and my wife. I want to take care of my wife. My wife is amazing. She has the biggest heart in the world. I want to take care of her and I want to take care of our family, and I don't ever want anybody to have to worry about anything. And I will put myself through the fire to make sure that happens.
For sure. Now, what habits do you live by? What is your holy grail?
Oh boy.
I think we all have a few at least that are a part of our day.
I would say the keystone ones, the most important ones. Every night before my wife and I go to bed, we say one thing we're grateful for about one another. We don't miss that. And if we do 2 the next day. That's a big one for me. Tracking finances is a big one. And you're going to notice it's health, wealth, and love. That's how our lives are set up. I should exercise more than I do. I'd love to say that I have a daily exercise habit. I don't. Do I aspire to get to that place? Probably. I think it would be beneficial for me to do yoga on days that I don't go to the gym or do jujitsu or whatever. Those are like health, wealth, and love ones. Learning for 30 minutes every single day. That's a big one for me. And then this is like a very meta habit, tracking habits in general. So every single day I track habits. I have a list of 20, whatever they are. I don't know how many it is now. But every single day, that's where I go in the morning and look. Okay, based on my schedule today, where can I fit in my 30 minutes of learning? I'll do that on the way home from the gym and then on the way to the gym. Awesome, cool. Where can I fit in my gratitudes with my wife? Well, that happens before bed. Don't worry about it. I have another one every day called Kitchen Man. So I do the dishes and I take care of the kitchen in our household. If I do it, I get a check. If I don't do it, I don't get a check. But we've realized that my wife is so much more happy and fulfilled and just, whatever it is, like less anxious when the kitchen's clean. So again, that's one of those things where it's like, all right, I'm going to take that. I have a ton of necessity to do it. It's going to make my wife happy and she's going to be feeling better because of that. Cool. Let me put that on here. So yeah, I live by habits. The reason we are where we are today is because I track habits. My business partner tracks habits, and everybody on our team, we have a 22-person team. The majority of people on our team have their own habits for their own health, for their own wealth, and for their own love, so everybody can grow at the same rate.
And it sounds like a lot of your habits too are at the end of the day what motivates you. Like making your wife happy is a habit, but it's also what motivates you 100%. And making sure she's comfortable and taken care of. Now, when it comes to habits, I actually did a podcast today that I put out this morning that was all about habit stacking. I'm not sure if you've ever heard about that. And it blew my mind. I always do some research before I start an episode, and it blew my mind that 40% of our day-to-day are just habits. And a lot of us, we don't take advantage of using these habits and amplifying them to motivate us, to keep us on track. Like, there's so many things that if we don't hear about it and learn about it, we could live our whole life without
100%
and bettering our life, right?
A lot of people think that they're not good at habits. Untrue. We just haven't leveraged your human design yet in the positive way. If you hit the drive-through every day, that's a habit. So it's not that we're bad at making habits. We're not always good at making habits go in the positive direction that we want to go. So even that little reshift, you're not bad at making habits. We just haven't figured out the right ones yet to help us get to the goal.
Exactly. And it's as simple as, like brushing your teeth. This is a habit that all we hopefully have. Now, people, you could just brush your teeth and be done. For me, a habit that I've implemented is I want to read more at night. So every time I brush my teeth in the morning, I pick a book at the same time and put it on my pillow. So once I'm done brushing my teeth at night, as soon as I crawl into bed, my book's already there. So I've made the habit of not only grabbing a book in the morning, but also reading at night. So that's just a clear example, right, of how we can utilize our day to shift those bad habits and make them good habits.
Love it.
Now, we had someone that submitted a question saying that as someone who finds many life coaches and motivational speakers too positive or have expectations that are not realistic for someone whose life is a bit harder, what is the best way to get my life together?
Ooh, I love you for that question. First off, whoever you are. Start smaller. Start embarrassingly small. Here's the issue. And same, I didn't resonate with most people because they had such high self-belief where they said, well, just believe in yourself. Thanks. Yep. No, I've been working on that for years. I haven't figured out how to do it, but that is breakthrough information. Thank you so much. Most people that give advice don't really understand what it's like to get to where they are because they don't know how much belief it took to get there. My business partner is a really good example of this because we've had this conversation. I've never met anybody who believes in themselves as much as this man. Nothing is impossible.
Really?
For him. It's wild. But when he used to give advice, I'd say, Alan, that's going to resonate with exactly 0 people because you don't know what it's like to be afraid to fail. Mm-hmm. You don't know what it's like to be afraid of not being enough. You have no idea. The frame we're on now is if you have a level 1 self-belief, I'm not making that, trust me, that's where I started. Set a level 1 goal. That's it. Don't worry about losing 15 pounds. Worry about, I'm going to go to the gym 1 time this week. Let me start there. And then I'm going to go 1 time next week. For a lot of us, we set goals that are setting ourselves up for failure. And then it becomes this perpetual cycle of I'm not good enough because I can't accomplish the goal. I'm breaking these small promises to myself. That's why New Year's resolutions are not necessarily good because you're trying to condense a year's worth of goal into one statement. I am going to do blank this year when in reality, that's a very, very large goal. So simplest thing is on a scale of 0 to 10, where do you believe your current level of self-belief is? Your own unique ability to accomplish something in the external world. Okay, let's say it's a 1. Set a level 1 goal. If it's level 2, set a level 2 goal. The beauty is you start to build momentum. You start to build self-trust. You start to build proof that you're capable of it. And then you're more confident you can set a bigger goal. And then rinse and repeat that forever. So yeah, don't be afraid to set a goal that to other people, you might be embarrassed to say it around them. It's not a bad thing. Honestly, most people I think a lot of us are being lied to where people say if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. Disagree. Most of us are already scared. The last thing we need to do is have goals that scare us too. Don't agree with that.
And no, I can even relate on that too. Like when I started my fitness journey, I always say on the podcast too, that make something so achievable, it sounds absolutely ridiculous not to be able to do. And for me, what that looked like was going outside for 5 minutes. It didn't matter what I was doing. It didn't matter if I was going for a run. It didn't matter if I was doing a little outdoor workout. It was just go outside for 5 minutes. And what happened with me is as soon as I got outside, it's that getting outside that you don't want to do. As soon as you're outside, I just did a 2-hour workout and run. And, it's starting where, okay, that is, and some days though, I did the 5 minutes. I stood out there for 5 minutes. I didn't want to do anything else, but I went outside for 5 minutes. Yeah. And every day looks different, I think, along that journey, right? Another thing we talk about, and I'm sure you can relate to it, is we often see the elevator of success and not the stairs that come with it. I see you before I talked. Well, he just went straight up the elevator. He started his podcast, decided he wanted to do it, and now he's on the top 100. But now that we're talking, I see you had a lot of stairs that you had to take to get up there, right? Yeah. Now, the person that asked that question, remember that your stairs may look different, but you don't have to take the elevator because practically nobody takes the elevator. We all have our own set of stairs. If you could go back, this is the last question we have today. If you could go back knowing what you know today, what would you tell yourself?
I would probably say if you do the majority of the things that you're afraid of, but you know you should do, you're going to look back and you're going to be so proud of yourself eventually. Now, juggling that with, you already should be proud of yourself for putting in the amount of effort you're putting in. But one day, 5 years from today, Kev is going to look back and say, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful that version of Kev was so brave and was willing to do the things that made him uncomfortable, because now you're going to be super proud of that. That would be a big one. And then the other thing would be, to your point, there's no such thing as overnight success. It's only overnight awareness. We all come across, I remember I used to listen to Macklemore before anybody knew who Macklemore was. Not really. There were still people, but then they're on the radio and it's like, oh my goodness, where did they come from? Little do we know that they've been playing shows in front of 16 people for the last 12 years. I wasn't one of those 16 people, so I didn't know who they were. Overnight awareness is something. overnight success, it does not exist. It just does not exist. And if it does, it's so statistically rare that it's most likely never going to happen to you. And that's okay. It shouldn't. You don't want it to happen to you. I know people who became overnight successes who couldn't handle it and lost it all. Lottery winners is a great example. If you don't have the skills to acquire something, you probably don't have the skills to handle it. So, yeah, all those. Mostly the proud one, though. Do the stuff today that the future you is going to be grateful that you did, because you're going to be in a different place in the future. It's going to either be by design or by accident. And I don't want it to be by accident for anyone.
And that can be, it sounds large, which it could be when you say do the things for your future self, but it could even be as simple, I think, as folding the laundry you've been putting off to do, because tomorrow you will be so grateful that they don't have to do that.
100%.
So where you talked about that you struggled with being that future person, always looking in the future, if you're just looking for tomorrow, whoever's listening, if you're just looking forward till tomorrow, well, do something that your tomorrow self will appreciate, 100%. Right?
It's all personal. It's all personal, and it's all custom to where you are, what you're going through, and what you want ultimately. That's why it's so hard to give advice, because my advice is good for certain people and it's not for other people. That's why I'm always trying to make sure it lands. And it's always challenging. It's challenging. Great questions. Great questions.
Yeah,
I know.
They pulled through for sure.
Strong work.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. I learned so much. I think when it comes to, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when it comes to having a podcast, you almost learn more throughout the journey, and they tend to help you a lot as well. I know sometimes I do an episode and at the end I'm like, whew, that was very healing for me too. But also whoever is listening or tuning in, watching us, thank you for joining us. I'm sure that you have learned so much from amazing Kevin Paulmieri. Do you have anything else that you want to add on today?
Be yourself. Be yourself. Be the amazing parts of yourself, and supplement yourself with learning and growing and evolving. But I think too many of us are trying to be other people. And I think it's going to be really hard for anyone. I'm guilty of this, as guilty as anybody else. It's hard to be fulfilled when you're trying to be someone else. So really lean into who you are, because that's what we're all trying to get to at the end of the day anyway. It's very weird how being ourselves is one of the hardest things in the world. But it's very much worth it. And I think that's another place where fulfillment lies. So that would be the last thing I would say.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
So very much. I've learned again so much. And you're always welcome on the show.
I appreciate
Please come back.
I'd love to. You're a wonderful host. You're a wonderful host, Court. I'm glad you're doing this. I'm glad you've had your journey, and your community is very blessed to have someone like you. So,
thank you very much.
Very welcome.
And before we go, as always, a friendly reminder to not only be kind to others, but also to your amazing, beautiful, badass, excuse my language, self. I love you all, and have an amazing day.